The PC-98 holds a unique legacy within gaming history, dating right way back to 1982. Due to Japan's PC market being so isolated from the world, the PC-98's gaming library remained completely unavailable outside of Japan, aside from a handful of official ports. Fan translation groups have stepped up over the years to ensure English speakers can experience more of this system's rich library. So let's discuss some of their work in today's video. And of course, because this is a video about Japanese games on the PC, there's going to be some hentai in here. Anyway, please like, comment, subscribe, algorithm boosting stuff, etc. Let's get straight into it. Nihon Falcom has a rich history that stretches far beyond Eastern Trails, the two franchises the company is known for nowadays. One of Falcom's iconic legacy franchises is Brandish. If you've heard of Brandish before, you're probably thinking of Brandish the Dark Revenant. This was a full remake of the first Brandish title, itself also a PC-98 game, for the PSP, which Exceed Games localised in 2015, making it one of the last official PSP localisations. What fewer people know is that Brandish is a series of 4 RPGs. The first 3 titles tell the stories of Ares and Della, who are navigating the politics of their ruined world, including the fallen Kingdom of Viltoria. The first 3 titles play pretty similarly. They are top-down dungeon crawlers, where Ares and Della always face upwards, meaning the screen rotates around them. The Brandish system is really unique, and remains the closest Nihon Falcom has what we now call the Soulsborne. Brandish 2, the Planet Buster, the game I'm discussing today, is a direct sequel to Brandish 1, here referred to as the Dark Revenant. Following the events of Dark Revenant, Ares soon ends up in the Kingdom of Bondevia, where the king, Bardora, orders a group of cavaliers to steal Ares' sword, the Planet Buster, which he acquired in Dark Revenant. Ares is soon overwhelmed and thrown into prison in typical jrpg fashion. Venezel, the prison guard, lures Ares into a trap. However, before Venezel's armada of guards can overwhelm Ares, Della, the main heroine from the first game, saves him. Or so he thought, because soon Della herself abandons him on another deserted island before she does an adult Christian and gets shipwrecked herself. Oh dear. Brandish 2 implemented a slew of new features, including a greater number of stages, being able to wield multiple types of weapons, alongside auto movement. Falcom re-released Brandish 2 in July 1995 under the name Brandish 2 Renewal. In this release, Falcom fixed multiple bugs and enclosed a bonus CD and answer book alongside the game itself. Koei ported Brandish 2 to the SNES in August 1995 before re-releasing it again in 1996, although unlike the original version of the Dark Revenant, they did not localise either SNES or PC-98 release outside of Japan. In 2009, fan translators SQYKLY and Denpa no Sekai released a full English patch for Koei's SNES release, which remained the only way to experience this slice of Nihon Falcom history for many years. This all changed in November 2017, when a fan translation group led by GU4N published a full English patch for the PC-98 version of Brandish 2 Renewal. This remains the definitive way to experience Brandish 2, because an official localization for Brandish 2 will likely never happen unless Falcom themselves remakes the game. And this likely will not happen for a very long time, because Falcom's main focus is finishing the Trail series. However, an East Memoir-esque HD remaster for the Dark Revenant's PSP remake is possible, and that's something I'd like to see them do sometime down the road. Therefore, for fans of Nihon Falcom, dungeon RPGs, Soulsborne, Japanese PC gaming in general, or even just fans of Brandish the Dark Revenant as a standalone game and want to see more of the same world, can consider playing this English patch. We cannot discuss the PC-98 without discussing the Touhou series. This iconic shoot-'em-up franchise of cute anime girls, its distinctly strange soundtrack, alongside the slew of officially licensed fan games, needs no further introduction, so we're just going to discuss what fans deem the quote-unquote PC-98 games. These are the first 5 Touhou titles Sun published throughout 1997 and 1998 exclusively at Comiket for the PC-98. These titles are, in release order, Highly Responsive to Prayers, Story of Eastern Wonderland, Phantasmagoria of Dim Dream, as in dim with a full stop, I don't think it stands for anything, Lotus Land Story, and Mystic Square. These titles established the iconic Touhou formula we know and love today. Zun later expanded on this formula when he rebooted the Touhou franchise in 2002 with the 6th mainline title, Embodiment of Scarlet Devil, after forming his now iconic brand, Team Shanghai Alice. The Touhou PC-98 titles have a very long patch history that's way too long to elaborate on for this video, so let's focus on the definitive versions of these patches. In August 2014, fan translator XGPX published full English patches for all 5 Touhou PC-98 games, which remain the best way to experience these titles in English. Official English versions of Touhou 1-5 will likely never happen because they are so old, alongside their import friendliness period. Therefore, your best option is to track down physical copies of the Japanese PC-98 releases and play them using this series of patches. But it's worth adding, it's still really impressive to see the world of Touhou so easily accessible with full English patches, which goes to show just how dedicated the Touhou fandom is, which is really cool. What is the quintessential PC-98 visual novel? Many VM fans would answer, you know, a girl who chants love at the bound of this world with a full stop. This game is one of the most iconic visual novels from the 1990s and still remains one of the most famous to this day. Developed by Elf, this classic title tells the story of Takuya Arima, who travels through time and space in order to discover the truth behind his father's sudden disappearance. This title became an instant hit thanks to its compelling story, immersive soundtrack, and distinctive art style. Yuno originally released for the PC-98 in December 1996 as an adult-only title, and established itself as one of the earliest games of what we now call visual novels. Elf ported Yuno to the Sega Saturn in 1997, also with its adult content, and Windows in 2000. In September 2011, TLWiki published a full English patch for the Windows version of Yuno, which marked this title's first English debut. However, younger or more casual visual fans will be familiar with the modern HD remake for PS4, Vita, Switch and PC. Mages, best known for the science adventure series, obtained the rights to Yuno following Elf's closure in March 2016. This remake fully revamps the art and soundtrack, adds a new opening theme alongside multi-language support, thanks to their localization partnership with chantsoft Inc., who promised a localization of Kenga Bansho Otome 2 with their poll, but never delivered on it. Yes, I'm still salty. However, the Yuno remake is divisive. Many people consider the remake's new presentation a step down from the original, because it lacks both the immersion and vibes that made Yuno so memorable to begin with. And of course, because this is a visual community, removing the adult content and reworking the game into a quote-unquote all ages only experience is considered the greatest sin you could possibly do. But hey, this is Mages. Perhaps if DMM Games, the company who obtained the rights to all other Elf franchises, managed to get Yuno as well, maybe things might have been different. In December 2025, fan translators Baba Jane Mill and Tom Yun ported TLWiki's translation over from the Windows release into the PC-98 original. Due to the content being identical, no major changes were required, and now thanks to compatibility issues with older releases of Windows, remains the best way to experience this title unofficially on PC, aside from the PC-98 of course. This patch is also quite poetic, as now the original version of Yuno, the version that popularised the title to begin with, alongside one of the most obscure platforms ever made, is now finally playable in English. Yuno has literally gone full circle. It's a neat slice of gaming history that you may appreciate if you're a fan of visual novels, and also doesn't take away from the hard work Mages and chantsoft put into the modern HD remake. So, if you're over the age of 18 and seek to experience the quintessential PC-98 visual novel, or you love the Yuno remake, consider checking out this English patch. The developer of this next title is not a household name within jrpg communities. However, I've been looking for an excuse to talk about this developer on the fan translation series for a while, and I'm really glad I finally have the opportunity to do so. Systemsoft Beta, formerly known as Systemsoft Alpha and before that just plain old Systemsoft, have a rich 30 plus years of history. This includes the Daizunmyaku, Master of Monsters and Sengoku Hime franchises. Some of these may ring a bell to niche RPG fans, especially if you can read Japanese or like World War II strategy games. Unless you're a fan of the PC-98, you have likely never heard of Tuned Heart, a fully standalone grid-based strategy RPG that systemsoft released exclusively for the PC-98 in 1996. In Tuned Heart, you're a member of an all-women squad who travel to Japan from all across the world to fight crime. This title parodies police dramas, but in a much more light-hearted manner, where you get to know the heroines through visual novel style storytelling segments in typical 90s anime fashion. Then there's the tuning mechanic, which itself is rooted in how motorbikes work in real life. By customizing the gal's motorbikes, you can change the tide of battle, and this whole experience is fully controlled with the PC-98's mouse, which is really cool. Tuned Heart is a very odd title within systemsoft's library. Considering how many of systemsoft's titles are quite realistic and serious, Tuned Heart immediately stood out upon its initial release in 1996, and even more so today. Its light-hearted tone may even have appealed to a Western audience, and definitely would today, considering Compile Heart exists. However, the niche nature of systemsoft's games means the company has never had a major foothold outside of Japan. Therefore, a Tuned Heart localization was never viable, even if systemsoft brought the game to other platforms more known for jrpgs like the PlayStation 1. In August 2019, Nebulous Translations published a full English patch for Tuned Heart on their website, alongside a lengthy blog post outlining the development history for the patch. The team originally planned to release the patch in 2017, but soon had to push the patch back to 2018, then finally 2019. This was mostly due to technical issues translating and inserting the last 10% of the game's text. By that point, almost everything except graphics were finished. I recommend reading the full page on their website about this, as the story is really interesting. Nowadays, systemsoft Beta are owned by Nipponichi Software and remain unknown outside of Japan. They mostly provide development support for NIS's own projects, both new titles like Disguise 7, alongside Japan-only Steam ports of old titles from both NIS and fellow subsidiary FOG, who make the Furaiki series. Systemsoft continues to work on their own franchises too when resources permit. All of this means there's no scope for a Tuned Heart revival, which wouldn't leave Japan anyway. Therefore, if you're interested in experiencing one of the weirdest strategy RPGs ever made within systemsoft's own legacy, this English patch is for you. It's no secret to regular viewers of this channel that I'm a huge fan of Aquaplus. Therefore, I'm thrilled to finally be able to cover this classic title within the fan translation series. Introducing Shizuku, the first title in the now famous Leaf visual novel series. This title tells the story of Yusuke Nagase, as he struggles to fight his descent into madness, all while juggling the mundanity of high school life. Reality and fiction soon begin to blur because one of his classmates, Kanako Ota, suddenly mentally deteriorates one day during class. Yusuke's uncle, who is conveniently a teacher at the school, asks him to investigate what's going on. And of course, given what I've said so far, you could probably guess the kinds of horrors his investigation reveals. Shizuku's legacy is iconic for so many reasons. This game is one of the earliest examples of what we now call denpa within visual novels, and remains the most famous example overseas. Shizuku was also the first game to use the term visual novel as part of its marketing, because Aquaplus coined the term to differentiate it from Chunsoft's sound novels. Shizuku was also among the first major works created by Tetsuya Takahashi, who later became known for his anime screenplays, including Eromanga Sensei. On a technical level, Shizuku was also a halfway house between the PC-98 and Windows era for visual novels, with its user interface and presentation style not truly belonging in either camps. It's a really interesting time capsule to look back on today. A fan translation group led by Hurt Saki published the full English patch for Shizuku in January 2026 to celebrate the game's 30th anniversary. This patch is for the original PC-98 version, not the renewal Windows version with its more conventional anime art style and added quality of life features. As of January 2026, 3 out of 5 titles in Aquaplus's iconic Leaf visual novel series are now playable in English, with the other 2 being Touhou and White Album via Steam. Yet, Shizuku will likely never join these titles on Steam for multiple reasons. First of all, Plus themselves retired the Leaf brand many years ago following the release of White Album 2 and no longer make adult titles. So it's very unlikely they'll want to re-release any of their adult-only titles without making a dedicated quote-unquote all-ages version. The only possible exception is Kizato, because Plus continue to acknowledge this equally iconic game through crossovers such as within Utawaremono Lost Frag. Moreover, Shizuku itself does mishandle some triggering subjects, including self-harm, SA, and child abuse. Therefore, Shizuku would likely resonate very poorly with Western audiences today, and devalue the Plus brand. Finally, Shizuku itself is really old on a technical level, and would need a lot of work to update for modern hardware, yet alone potentially cutting 95% of the game just so Shirofune can try to get a shell build on Steam to begin with to try to make their money back. All of this together makes an official localization of Shizuku very difficult to justify. Yet, its impact on gaming history means this English patch is still worth noting. Even mainstream gaming sites, like PC Gamer, covered Hisaki's English patch when it came out, which goes to show just how iconic Shizuku is just by itself. Therefore, if you're interested in experiencing this historically significant game, this English patch is your only option. The Megami Tensei series is a vast, sprawling franchise dating way back to the 1980s, when writer Aya Nishitani created a trilogy of short stories, Digital Devil Story Megami Tensei. This is the true origin of the Shin Megami Tensei franchise that we now associate with Atlus. Aside from royalties, of which Nishitani receives fuck all from Atlus by the way, the last time he directly worked on a Megami Tensei video game was back in 1997, Giten Megami Tensei Tokyo Revelation. This dungeon crawling RPG originally released for the PC-98 in April 1997 before getting a Windows PC remake in December 1999. Developed by Yuki Kaku and published by ASC2 MediaWorks, Giten Megami Tensei is one of the few Megaten games not developed by Atlus, although the Atlus brand does appear on the title screen, so clearly they had some oversight with this game's development. Set in the year 19XX, Tokyo was almost destroyed after an attack by ICBMs, which was ordered by Ambassador Foreman, a recurring character within the Megaten universe. The citizens of Tokyo managed to shelter underground, while the surface level of Tokyo became infested with demons. A new world order was born, and 20 years later, protagonists Ayato Katsuragi and Yuka Tachibana must navigate life as devil busters within this world. So this scenario sounds very similar to other titles within the Megaten series. That's how you know they're connected. Speaking of connections, Giten Megami Tensei does share direct plot connections to both the original Shin Megami Tensei on the SNES alongside the official Tokyo Revolution manga, not to mention all the recurring demons you all are already familiar with. And of course, because Giten Megami Tensei is for the PC-98, there's a lot of overly sexualized and even erotic demon designs and encounters, which is unique across the entire Megaten series. I can't even show the original PC-98 cover on YouTube without censoring it, because as you can't see, it includes full frontal nudity, because of course it does. Gameplay wise, Giten Megami Tensei's combat remains menu based, but instead adopts a Final Fantasy 80B style cooldown system, so characters must wait before acting again. There is no turn order, unlike the mainline series. Demons can also equip items that match their equipment type. The Windows version significantly revamps the game, adding a fully customizable interface, revamped graphics, and a rearranged soundtrack. Giten Megami Tensei wasn't localized for two reasons. The first relates to the well-known documented concerns that Atlus had about localizing the series due to its strong religious themes, with them choosing to focus on other spin-off series like Persona and Demi Kids. The other reason, which you can probably guess, is the sexual content. According to Megaten Maniacs, a guidebook celebrating the Shin Megami Tensei franchise's 25th birthday, Giten Megami Tensei is no longer considered part of the Megami Tensei series. In other words, the developers were ashamed of featuring first-person sex and full frontal nudity within a Megaten title. Therefore, they retconned Giten Megami Tensei out of existence for convenience purposes, which is quite fitting given the Megaten series themes around nature, psychology, and morality. Not to mention, even if Atlus wanted to revive Giten Megami Tensei, there are many other, more universally beloved and of course age-appropriate Megaten titles that need remasters first. All this means it's unlikely Giten Megami Tensei will ever come back. Therefore, the best way for you to experience this unique oddity within the Megaten franchise is via the Ingus patch for the PC-98 version, which is widely available online, courtesy of Zemeckis. As of March 2026, the Ingus patch for Giten Megami Tensei is technically not finished, however it is possible to play through the entire game to the very end, and thanks to fan translators, cultured Megaten has never been easier to discover. And that's going to do it for today's video. I don't know when I'm going to make a part 2 to PC-98 specifically, but I would love to make a part 2 because there are many games I actually had to cut. Have you played any of these games? You probably haven't, so if that's you, which one do you want to play? I really want to play Tuned Heart for one, and of course Shizuku. Anyway, please let me know other thoughts down in the comments below. Please like, comment, subscribe, algorithm boosting stuff, etc. Thank you so much everybody, have a lovely day, bye bye.